morning. Meeting of the Transit and Bus Committee is called to order. Mr. Marino, are there any members of the public who have signed and indicated a willingness to speak?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. We have 4 public speakers this morning. The first speaker is Jean Ryan. Ms. Ryan will be followed by Pedro Valdez Rivera. Ms. Ryan.
Good morning. My name is Jean Ryan. I'm from Disabled in Action, and I ride the express buses as well as Access Ride. Since the last meeting, I've only taken 5 express bus trips, but I would have taken 10. But I can't take it in the morning because if I get a driver who doesn't really know what he's doing, he wants me to wait for the next bus, and all the passengers get really mad at me. And who needs that kind of hassle in the morning? So every single morning when I go someplace where the express buses go, I take Access Ride, and I have to call it 1 or 2 days in advance for that. So it's still important to train the drivers so that we can use the express buses just like everybody else. The other thing is that I had problems with 2 trips, not because of the drivers, but because at Thomas Street there are always cars parked along the curb blocking the bus stop, always. So, you know, I couldn't go to that one, and I had to go to 250 Broadway, which is further away. The other problem is the tour buses. They just hang out in bus stops. They sit there, not just for a minute or 2 to let people off and on. They just hang out there for 10 minutes or however long they want to. And at one stop at West Street and Battery Place, the bus was there for more than 10 minutes and the driver wasn't even in the bus. Now, that's not the express bus. That's the tour bus that's in the same shared bus stop, so I had a really hard time getting on the bus. So please do something about the tour buses.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. The next speaker is Pedro Valdez Rivera, and he will be followed by Omar Vera.
Good morning. My name is Pedro Valdez Rivera Jr. I'm a private citizen from Bedford-Stuyvesant. Today, I'll talk about the contracts on the one request for proposals on the communications-based train control on the Queens Boulevard line phase 1. I tend to support it, and on the conditions that this contract, as well as any other future contracts that try to make the signal system modernized, needs to be held accountable every single day. I received the L train, the contracts for the L train CBTC, as well as the 7 train CBTC. They over budget, they're years late. Riders are fed up by this, so I hope the Queens Boulevard line contracts for the communications-based train control will be a good first step to hold these contractors accountable, incentivize them who finish these on time and on budget, and penalize them who finish it even a day late. I hope the MTA will follow the footsteps of this contract, so therefore it be hold other contractors accountable to modernize the whole subway signal system. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Omar Vera. Mr. Vera will be followed by Murray Bowden.
Good morning, MTA Board Transit Committee. Welcome to another edition of your meeting. Well, we have a lot to discuss, actually. First, let's discuss the schedules. While I'm in support of this adjustment, because we need better subway train flows, I still reiterate my Lefferts Boulevard Rockways plan with the A and C trains. That must be done, and it must be done eventually. I'll keep pushing for it until it's done. All right, enough to the next point. thanks for the past 2 weeks, those informative town hall meetings that regarding the Canarsie Tube's repair. It is long overdue, and you know, which is really good, we're going to have another free out-of-system transfer at Hughes Street, which is actually closer to the Broadway station than the Lorimer Street station is. So if you want to construct an in-system transfer in the future, that will be the way to go. Because it will be much easier to construct it from Hughes than from Lorimer, since there's nothing really blocking Hughes. Third, we can move forward with this with the Canarsie project, but be sure that the construction firm responsible for helping goes through, because especially from your experience, President Byford, when you were head of the TTC, you had to dismiss a couple of people who were behind schedule constructing that York-Spadina extension. So, for that, must keep the flow going. And last but not least, have a great month, and I'll see you around.
Thank you, Mr. Vera. The next speaker is Murray Bowden. Mr. Bowden.
So what does the future look like? The future looks like what happened yesterday at the graduation of my grandson at Trinity College in Hartford. It was a graduation I have never anticipated seeing in my lifetime. The closest thing to it was the wedding in England that shook everybody up. This graduation shook everybody up too. This younger generation knows what they are doing. It's reflected right here in this committee. The leadership of Transit, Andy's doing the kind of job. I saw these young students from all over the world, every culture possible, demonstrating yesterday. What's being done in this committee is spilling over into Long Island Railroad and Metro North. I heard things this morning that surprised me, how quickly they're moving forward. The time frames have been compressed. The ideas that have been kicking around for years are actually happening, to my surprise, at Metro North and Long Island Railroad. And if you can build on that, and they will build on that because the momentum is there, to my surprise, the MTA is changing at a rate that is unbelievable. Standing in a corridor, people tell me those new double-decker buses are wonderful. Standing in a lobby downstairs, people came up and said, hey, keep going. Things are getting better. It's being led right here, and it's spreading right across the MTA at an alarmingly good rate. Welcome to 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Mr. Chairman, that was the last speaker.
Thank you. The minutes of our April meeting are in the committee book. May I have a motion to approve? Second. Are there any changes, discussion on them? Yes, Mr. Weisbrod.
Mr. Chairman, I'm listed as being present on in the minutes, and I was actually not here. So I don't want to be held responsible for anything that may have happened at that meeting.
Let the minutes reflect that.
Thank you very much.
Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, the minutes are adopted. Are there any changes to the work plan?
There are none.
None. Then, great pleasure to ask President Byford to make his report.
Okay, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to just make a few brief comments, and I will keep them brief today because it's going to be a very busy week for us with the launch of the corporate plan later this week, on Wednesday, in fact, and certainly you'll be hearing enough from me then, so I'd like to really give my colleagues the floor for the majority of this meeting. But a few highlights from me, and it very much reflects the fact that what we're doing, and I appreciate the kind comments made by one of the speakers just now, it's a team effort. It really is a team effort. So things that I'm going to highlight include the fact that, one, in less than 100 working days of us getting together as a team, we have a compelling, bold, imaginative corporate plan ready to launch in 48 hours on Wednesday. Two, we're having some success. I mean, this absolutely predated me. John, I wanted to do a big shout out to you, John O'Grady, my Chief Capital Officer, and his team for bringing in the Myrtle Avenue Viaduct job on time, on budget. John, that's fantastic. I'd like that to be a mark of my tenure, certainly, that becomes the norm, and you and your team should be very proud of that. It was great to be down there. A couple of other highlights for me. We've talked previously about these much fabled vacuum trains, these giant hoovers, as I call them, that move along the line. There are 3 vacuum trains. They're running. They've had challenges in putting them together, but the good news is, I was expecting to say one's just about across the Atlantic. It's actually arrived. Frank, my COO, sent me a picture the other day. The first of 3 vacuum trains is now on property. It's down at Coney Island. We've done a lot of the testing already. We need to get it commissioned. We need to finish off the testing, and then we're going to get that thing deployed. There will be 1 per division, and they will move up and down the lines, and you will see a massive improvement in the state of the track bed, because these things are very powerful and fit for purpose. So that is good news, which I'm really pleased about. I want to do a big shout out for Craig, you and Daryl, the work that you've done on getting us to where we've got to on Staten Island. There's a public hearing tonight, and I met with Jimmy Otto, the borough president, the other day, and the electeds over on Staten Island, and I think we're in a good place, ready for the public hearing. People are pretty appreciative of the work that you and your team have done. So I think that will get a positive assent when that goes to the hearing tonight. I'm very confident about that. Someone already Murray made reference, or Omar actually made reference to the hearings that we've had on the L-line closure. Again, I think we're in a good place on that. There's still a few more bits to do to just finish off the plans ready for the closure, which is less than a year away now. And then finally, I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that we have today for the first meeting Sally as our new SVP Subways, Frank as the Chief Operating Officer. Couldn't ask for someone with a more encyclopedic knowledge of this railway to run it. Also, Mike Cosgrove. Mike has been confirmed as the VP for Paratrans. And Joe Joyce, I'm not sure if Joe's here, has been confirmed as the VP for Maintenance of Way. What we're doing is putting together a world-class team, a compelling mix of internal promotions, but also some external appointments, such as Sarah, to truly take this company forward. And you'll see that reflected in the plan that we'll be putting before the full board on Wednesday. With that, I will take any questions, Mr. Chairman, that you may have of me. Otherwise, we'll move to the experts sections.
Good morning. My name is Sally Lubrera, and I am honored to represent Subways here today. I would like to say, before starting my report, that on behalf of the entire team of Subways, there are so many aspects of what we do that are real sources of pride for the team. But that said, we know that we need to do better. We know that our customers expect and deserve stronger performance in terms of reliability, and we're committed to delivering it. With respect to the operating report in April, we had mixed results in terms of performance. We've talked about here that post-SAP, we've seen significant reductions in major incidents in track, signals, and cars. 10% for track, close to 17% for signals, and 13% for cars. That performance was not evident in the month of April. We had some significant incidents that impacted service. They happened at particularly impactful parts of the system, at particularly impactful parts of the day, and that's service that we know that we need to improve. We had a few locations where we actually had multiple major incidents at the same location over the course of the month. We had that at 96th and Broadway. We had that at Ditmars in Astoria, and we also had that at Bergen Street on the F&G. In those places, we have instituted multidisciplinary fixes, and we continue to monitor performance. But performance has stabilized in each of those locations. Moving on to a positive note, the fleet MDBF for the month of March is included in your materials today. And that is the highest single month of MDBF that we've had in close to 2 years, since May of 2016. We attribute this improvement to many targeted campaigns that have focused on specific components in the fleet that have had an outsized impact on overall performance. The MDBF for the month was over 136,000 miles, which is 13% higher than our 12-month average, which was itself 4.5 percentage points higher than the prior 12 months. Moving on to elevator availability, we saw elevators had an availability in the month of April of 96.5%, which is a continuation of improved performance that we've seen in that area. Of particular note is the availability of the Washington Heights elevators at 5 stations in Washington Heights on the A and 1 lines, where we have seen availability in first quarter of 17 go from 88% to first quarter of 18 go to over 94%. And we attribute that to the addition of contractor resources at those stations in particular in December of 17. And those results are included in your quarterly report that's part of your materials. On April 16th, the city experienced extreme rainfall over a short period of time, which led to street-level flooding and some isolated station-level flooding. We're pleased to report today that the track drains did their job on April 16th. They took on the water and they avoided any significant disruption to service, and that is due to the extensive track cleaning efforts that have taken place under SAP. And lastly, I'd just like to join Andy's comment in saying that we're very pleased with the full restoration of M-Line service at the end of April, again offering a one-seat ride to tens of thousands of customers in and out of Manhattan. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. Mr. Albert has a question.
Yes, welcome, Sally.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if you are pleased with the delivery schedule and performance thus far of the R179 fleet.
So far we have 6 trains in operation at this point. We are still working on the production schedule. We'd like to see that move to a more reliable production rate. And we're committed to working with the contractor to do that. We have seen the recent performance of the 179s. We've been pleased with it. It's been more reliable than the initial performance, where we identified some early issues and had those addressed. So yes, we're pleased, and we continue to meet with the car builder. We have another meeting, I believe, the day after tomorrow, to review all of the recent troubles and work through any necessary fixes.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Please.
I might just add, just so you know, Commissioner Albert, a number of us are going up to Plattsburgh deliberately to visit the plant. We want to walk the production line. We want to see for ourselves what's going on up there. Excuse me, I've done it before elsewhere. It's always very insightful to go to the production line because not only can you see what's going on, you can see what's kind of a sense of urgency there is, but also it's very handy to break off from the often quite, how should we put it, shepherded way that they want you to walk around the plant. You just break off and go and ask a frontline employee, do you have everything you need? What do you think about the challenge of getting to a one-day beat rate? Do you have all the tools you need? Do you feel you're getting the backing? It's very insightful, actually, when you go and speak to the troops on the production line. So Frank and I and a couple of other people are going up to Plattsburgh shortly, and we'll report back to you on what we find. They know when we're coming because you can't just walk in, unfortunately. But what they don't know is who we're going to talk to because we reserve the right to talk to who we want.
Ms. Libera, congratulations. It's nice to see you at the table. I have just a very quick question with regards to the categories of delay, which I understand are under review. There's a category for police and there's a category for unruly customer. Do those overlap at some point? And if so, are they double counted? How is that teased out? Because I'm assuming that police are responding at times to incidents with an unruly customer.
So the first answer is they're not double counted. And the second answer is that we continue to work to look at our process for how we tease out those types of categories. We do currently go through a process of identifying the primary trouble code, which would then lead up to one of the categories that's included in the reports that we put out. So in terms of an unruly versus a police charge, it most likely has to do with the involvement of the police. We do have cases of unruly customers where police are not involved. So that would be the sort of primary distinction. But, I will note, and I know Andy mentioned this last month in his report, charging delays to one area versus another is something that is difficult to do at a precise level when you're looking at thousands of trains that you're categorizing over the course of the day. We have multiple efforts underway to improve that process. And last month, we talked about moving away from two different systems of categorizing delays or holding delay information, the terminal delay database, and then the central incident reporting at the RCC. The reports that you have in your book today are still based on the terminal delay database because they're for the month of April. But we did pull that data in beginning mid-April, and we've been validating it and putting it through all sorts of quality assurance. The early report is that we're confident we're capturing the entire population of delays in the central incident database, which puts us in a much better position to be improving the accuracy of the delay categorization, because we can look from an incident level from someone's perspective who has perspective over the entire railroad as to which delays are ripple effect delays from other types of incidents. And so also more consistent application, to your direct question about unruly versus police, would come from that improvement. So we're certainly on that trajectory and making progress.
I'd also like to welcome you. Congratulations, and really pleased that you're here. I have a similar question to Ms. Vanderpool's, but a little different. I know that reasons for delay and categories of delay are under review, and I think that's a great thing, and I appreciate the difficulties in categorizing them. But with respect to major incidents, which are, you know, a smaller category, do you see any pattern in those over the last several months of reasons for those major incidents? Is there any pattern that's emerging about what's causing those, or do they tend to be basically random?
So, you know, a major incident, as we've categorized it here, is an incident that causes 50 or more trains to be delayed. So the location and timing of an incident has a big impact on whether or not it becomes a major incident. So a particular switch failure, if it happens in the middle of the night, might not make it onto the major incident list, but if it happens, you know, at the peak on a weekday, then it will. So when we look at trends over the period of time, over the last few months, we've certainly been challenged by weather and cold temperature, which impacts the performance of right-of-way assets. But we do see that the core major incidents of track, signals, and car equipment are down post-SAP. And we credit that to the system-wide efforts that have gone on with respect to those areas. And we also credit it to the fact that we've been able to respond to incidents more quickly, which is another factor that goes into the major incidents. By staging additional medical personnel or by staging additional technical personnel, we've been able to get to incidents more quickly when they happen.
But so far, no, with respect to those incidents, no very clear pattern of certain triggers that continuously cause those incidents, at least not yet. Am I misreading that answer?
Well, the triggers would be incidents that happen at particularly impactful locations. That would be probably the biggest data point that would jump off the page. And we are intensifying our efforts around those critical locations. We have specific efforts in place to make sure we understand not just the assets that are performing at a different level or a substandard level from what we'd like to see, but we also have a list of critical assets that we know have an outsized impact on the performance. And when something happens in those areas, they cause a significant disruption and inconvenience to our customers. And so we are paying extra careful attention to those areas. We are enhancing preventative maintenance efforts in those areas.
Okay. I think now we're ready for our, thank you very much. Ready for our bus report, be delivered this morning by Mr. Cipriano.
Thank you. Last month, we officially launched the bus plan, and as part of that plan, this month we began testing a double-decker bus in service on the X17J Express bus route in Staten Island. The bus provides 42% more capacity than our regular express buses, reducing pollution and road congestion. As the test nears its end this week, we continue to evaluate our customer feedback. Initial indications are showing that the majority of customers feel the seat and ride comfort are comparable or better than our current express buses. Next month, we will be testing another new model express bus, one that also provides a wheelchair ramp rather than a lift for our wheelchair customers. One of the central features of the bus plan is a top-to-bottom redesign of the network by 2021. We have a head start as the Staten Island Express redesign will be implemented in August. As Andy said earlier, and as a reminder, there is a public hearing on this project tonight from 6 to 8 at the Staten Island College. Designing a new system from the ground up is a complex job given the size and scope of our city. As such, we have decided to take a borough-by-borough approach. Building on our work in Staten Island, the Bronx will be next. Critical to our success will be public engagement and building a network that reflects the preferences, priorities, and needs of all New Yorkers. We will actively seek the engagement and support of all our stakeholders, and I will continue to brief you on this and other elements of the bus plan in the coming months. On to paratransit. Again, piggybacking on Andy's congratulations, I'd like to congratulate Mike Cosgrove as a new VP of paratransit. Mike brings over 30 years of experience on the job and an unwavering commitment to our customers and our vision of customer-centric, flexible, reliable, and transparent organization. Our live dashboard is available on the MTA website and has been updated to reflect the latest performance indicators. March performance was impacted by adverse weather that saw 4 nor'easters in that 1 month. In addition, call center performance was below goal due to a data outage by one of our e-hail providers. We continue to move forward with system improvements. This month, our customers will be able to track broker vehicles in real time on our web-based app, which is something they have been requesting. Using our Where's My Vehicle function on the web, customers can track both dedicated and broker trips. Our e-hail program, which introduced on-demand services, continues to be very popular with our customers. We now have over 1,100 customers in the on-demand portion of the pilot and have completed over 32,000 trips since the end of last year. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Mr. Albert has a question on the bus portion of your
Yes,
report.
Craig, on the new double-decker buses, to reduce dwell time, are there indicators on the upper level, electronic indicators, what stops are coming up so that folks can get ready and go downstairs in time so that you don't have to wait at every stop an additional amount of time?
So on the double-decker bus we're testing right now, there's a camera where people can see, seating availability. So that's one aspect of that.
Right.
If we, this was a 30-day test. If we did choose to move forward with more double-decker buses, part of our standard new bus spec right now are digital information screens providing information. So that will be,
And I assume the bus operator is preparing people for their stop by making announcements in advance.
Yes, absolutely. And the bus operator makes a-day announcements. Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Safety report will be delivered by Mr. Heyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning. The safety report begins on page 87. Reflected on our report, subway fires slightly decreased in a 12-month period ending April 2018 when comparing them to the same period last year. They also showed a considerable decrease when comparing them on a monthly basis. And it's worth noting that 99% of the fires were of low or average severity. Subway customer accidents increased in a 12-month period ending March 2018 when comparing them to the previous 12 months. These were mostly driven by slip, trip, fall incidents, the majority of which occurred on stairs, platforms, and in the mezzanine areas. We're continuing our in-depth, comprehensive analysis of these incidents in order to effectively reduce their frequencies. Bus collisions, collision injuries, and customer accidents continue to decline on a 12-month basis. As previously noted, our efforts to reduce employee lost time accidents and rates are continuing to show results, with steady declines seen in the most recent 12 months. Finally, with regards to our leading indicators, we are steadily moving ahead and anticipate reaching all of our goals. This completes our safety report.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the safety report? Hearing none, let's move on to the crime report. Chief Coogan.
Okay, good morning. I'm pleased to report a continued year-to-date decline in subway crime, with total major felonies down 8.2% as of the end of April. There were 65 fewer total major felonies compared to the same period last year, with 732 versus 797 crimes. There were 23 additional robberies, with 151 versus the 128 that occurred during the same period last year. Grand larcenies were down 12.8%, with 70 fewer incidents. Felony assaults were down 10.5%, with 12 fewer incidents. Year-to-date, daily major felony average is now 6.1%. During April, 40% of the total major felonies were committed in Manhattan, 27% in Brooklyn, 21% in the Bronx, and 12% in Queens. I want to commend the work of members from our Manhattan Task Force for a recent arrest. Detective Rudau, Officer Al Tabani, and Officer Say Shum were performing plainclothes patrol last Thursday when they spotted Michael Green, a known pickpocket in the vicinity of 42nd Street and 3rd Avenue. For over 30 minutes, our officers kept Mr. Green under observation as he traveled along public streets, boarded a city bus, only to abruptly disembark, and repeatedly scanned his surroundings, all telltale signs of an individual casing victims and conducting counter-surveillance against law enforcement. Thankfully, our skilled officers kept Mr. Green under observation as he entered the subway system at Grand Central, mind you, by evading the fare, and boarded a downtown 6 train where he distracted a fellow rider and attempted to steal property from his backpack. Our officers quickly moved in and Mr. Green was apprehended as the train pulled into Union Square. The level of patience, focus, and speed of action displayed by our officers are especially worthy of praise. As Chief Delatorre mentioned last month, we're pleased to see that neighborhood policing has arrived in our subways. It is a department-wide approach that adds elements of accountability, customer service, and increased uniform presence by assigning officers to specific areas of responsibility. By this summer, Transit Districts 3, 4, 20, and 32 will join Districts 20 and 30 as neighborhood policing districts. We expect to have a bureau-wide implementation to the remaining 6 transit districts by early 2019. I thank you and welcome any questions you may have.
Mr. Chief Coogan. Mr. Albert, then Mr. Weisbrot.
Thanks for a report, a great report, Chief. I have actually 3 questions. Is the decline in the number of TABs because fare evasion is not being enforced as much as it used to be, certainly by the Manhattan DA, or is there something else at work there?
The amount of tabs are down. We've been focusing because of our crime on subways, so we've been putting more, many more cops doing train patrols and at the turnstiles. But yes, the numbers are down, but that's one of the main reasons.
Okay, thanks. If somebody commits a crime on the street and runs into the subway and is arrested in the subway by police officers, that's not considered a subway crime, correct?
No, it would be credited to the street where it happened.
And lastly, there does seem to be, from news reports, an uptick in pushing of people off the platforms. Are police officers, looking out for people that might be likely to do that, or casing the joint, as you said?
If they're emotionally disturbed. There was one last week where they were walking by each other and he bumped in. I don't believe I know why he would do that, but just because of a bump, they had words, and then he shoved the guy in the tracks. He was arrested. We do have arrests on most of these incidents, but, some are emotionally disturbed persons. We obviously, if we see an emotionally disturbed person acting out in the platform or another area, we want our officers, to call EMS, get this person help, and take them to a hospital before something like that might happen. And that I continually, you got to let the officers know to, when they see somebody, difference between somebody, emotionally disturbed or acting out. You got to, step in and get this person help and get them to a hospital before they might hurt somebody.
Thanks.
Mr. Weisbrot.
Mr. Albert asked my question. I withdraw my question.
Anyone else? And thank you for your report, Chief. Ms. Patel will deliver the Transit and Staten Island Rail Finance Report.
Good morning. Preliminary March 2018 fare box revenue was $386 million. It was $7.5 million below budget. The operating expenses exceeded the budget by $2.3 million, and ridership totaled $194.6 million for the month, which was $14.4 million below budget. That concludes my report.
Any questions on that part of the finance report? Then I'll ask Mr. Cipriano to present MTA Bus Finance.
Thank you. Preliminary March 2018 MTA bus farebox revenue of $18.1 million was $1 million below budget. Operating expenses were below budget by $2.2 million. Ridership totaled $10.4 million for the month of March, which was $0.8 million below budget. Average weekday ridership for the 12 months ending March 2018 showed a decrease of 2.9% from the same period last year. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the MTA Bus Finance Report? Hearing none, ready to turn to Mr. O'Grady for the Capital Program Report.
Good morning. The Capital Program Report for this month is 11 projects were awarded during March 2018, totaling $550 million. This included the repair of Superstorm, Sandy damage, and long-term resiliency protection at Coney Island Yard, a very large project awarded to Tully Construction, track and switch replacement, projects on Broadway Concourse, Eastern Parkway and Astoria Line to in-house forces, and a smaller type project, circulation improvements at Marcy Avenue on the Jamaica Line. Meanwhile, completions during the month totaled 24.7. This included the acceptance of 8 R-179 cars for the B Division. That concludes the Capital Program Report.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this part of the report? Thank you, Mr. O'Grady. Now for and any other questions on the totality of the customer service report? If there are none, I'll ask Mr. Lieber to present MTACC projects report.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. The Cortlandt Street Station project continues to make progress towards a projected opening in October, and a significant facet of that is intense engagement with the New York City Transit team as we prepare for the takeover and the turnover and the startup of operations. Again, repetitive, but it's important, I think, to model a good process on that, and Andy Byford and his team have been fantastic partners. I think we're hopefully breaking new ground. One significant risk that we talked about last month at CPOC was the dependence on the Port Authority area at the north end, because we have a elevator, an ADA elevator, and some stairs in that area. We found a workaround. My team, led by Dan Creighton, has found a workaround, relocating of an elevator machine room. It's a little technical, but right now we have managed, I think, to separate ourselves from the risk of Port Authority performance in that area. So I'm very hopeful that that will increase the probability of success in meeting the projected October opening. And I think that's what I want to cover today. Thank you. Obviously, I'll be able to answer questions.
Any questions for Mr. Lieber? Thank you. Now we're ready for procurements. Mr. Plachaki.
Good morning. The procurement package, which presents New York City Transit and MTA Bus Company procurements, includes 4 actions totaling $53.8 million in expenditures. I would like to highlight 2 actions in this month's agenda. The first item is a modification to an existing communication-based train control contract for the provision of a CBTC train operator simulator system for the Queens Boulevard Line project in the amount of $2,754,675 for a term of 33 months, inclusive of warranty, maintenance, and support services to Siemens Industry Incorporated. This action also includes the request for approval of a 5-year maintenance contract with an option for an additional 5 years in the total amount of $1.6 million with Corys, the simulator manufacturer and subcontractors to Siemens under this modification. To streamline the procurement process for the acquisition of this simulator, New York City Transit Procurement conducted a competitive selection process between New York City Transit's 2 qualified CBTC suppliers, Siemens and Thales. After receiving and evaluating technical and price proposals, both from both suppliers in accordance with the criteria, the selection committee unanimously recommended to only negotiate with Siemens and their subcontractor Corey's based on the superior technical proposal and considerably lower price. The negotiations not only covered the acquisition of the CBTC simulator, but also included a long-term maintenance contract directly with Corey's, the actual simulator manufacturer. This innovative streamlined procurement approach not only leveraged the competitive nature of the simulator procurement, but further included the maintenance services for the useful life of the simulator. The negotiated pricing for the simulator and long-term maintenance agreement were found to be fair and reasonable based on the competitive nature of the procurement, as well as favorable comparison to the estimate. The next item I'd like to highlight is the award of a competitively negotiated federally funded procurement for the purchase of 53 low-floor 60-foot articulated diesel buses and related items to New Flyer of America Incorporated in the total estimated amount of $45,453,955 for MTA Bus Company. The solicitation was advertised and 8 bus manufacturers directly contacted. Proposals were received from New Flyer and Nova Bus. The selection committee reviewed and evaluated the proposals from both proposers as well as attended oral presentations. Negotiations were conducted and best and final offers were received from both proposers. The selection committee evaluated the best and final offers in accordance with the evaluation criteria and unanimously selected New Flyer for award. The selection committee determined that New Flyer's substantially higher technical evaluation and significantly better delivery schedule far outweighed Nova Bus's slightly lower price, which was less than 1% lower than New Flyer's price. The delivery of the production buses is scheduled to begin in November 2019 and be completed in February 2020. It should be noted that New Flyer will complete the delivery of all 53 buses before Nova Bus would have delivered its first production bus. This is a federally funded procurement, and as the New Flyer has committed to complying with 70% Buy America requirement. New York City Transit has already completed the pre-award Buy America audit, verifying New Flyer's compliance with this requirement. The 53 articulated buses will be manufactured in New Flyer's Anniston, Alabama facility, where New Flyer employs 620 employees. These buses will be outfitted with new features including improved driver visibility, pedestrian turn warning, Wi-Fi, USB charging ports, digital information screens, automatic passenger counters, and new branding. New Flyer's negotiated price was determined to be fair and reasonable based on the competitive nature of the procurement as well as best value. I request for your approval of all items in the agenda.
Before questions and comment, may I have a motion to approve the procurement package? Second, are there any questions or comments on this package? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Procurement package is passed. Thank you. Next is Mr. Caffiero, who will be talking about the, with Mr. Holmes, the service changes.
Thank you. So this month for New York City Transit, we have one service change staff summary in your package for information. It details changes that will be incorporated into our fall 2018 subway schedule adjustments. Based on recent ridership counts and our service guidelines, we're recommending additional service for 4 lines, the A, D, E, and F. These additional trips are during the periods just before and after our peak hours where we have track capacity to operate additional service. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have on this, or Mark can talk. Okay.
Yeah, Peter, the additional A service, is that both Lefferts Boulevard and Far Rockaway A service, or just to one of those destinations?
Primarily, this was for 3 additional trips, so I suspect it's to both, but I'll get back to you on it.
Thank you.
It's basically for the Fulton Street peak corridor, which is common to both.
Anyone else before we go to the bus section? Oh, Mr. Weisbrot.
Yeah, can I just ask, is there an inability to increase service during peak hours because of capacity, or is it just the demand is in the shoulder periods?
So in most of our lines during peak hours, we are at track capacity. We're also at size of our car fleet at current times. There are a few lines where we have some ability to add peak service, but right now I feel we're in guidelines on those.
Okay, thank you. No one else? I'll ask Mr. Holmes to take on the bus portion of this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning. There are two MTA bus staff summaries for your information that can be found in your board materials starting on page 188. The first staff summary outlines routine bus schedule adjustments in response to changes in ridership on 7 lines. This is to take effect this July. On page 193, we describe a small change at the terminus of the Queensbound QM 24, 25, and 34 express bus routes. The change relocates the travel path to use Myrtle Avenue, which is the same street used by the Manhattan-bound trips. This is to establish directional uniformity between all lines. And this concludes the service change section of the agenda.
Questions or comment on the bus part of the service changes? There are none. Then I'll ask President Byford to make standard follow-up reports.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you'll see, board members, in your packs, you've got the standard follow-up reports for the following, and these represent activities for first quarter of 2018. The MetroCard report, the elevator and escalator report, the TAB report, and finally the NYCT Transit and MTA Bus, EEO and Diversity reports. Unless you have any questions on the first three, I will ask Joel Andrews, VP of EEO and Diversity, to comment on the diversity report.
Good morning. I'll provide the committee with a summary report on New York City Transit and MTA Bus Company's workforce demographics, new hires, and discrimination complaints for the period beginning January 1st of this year through March 31st of this year. The agency's full EEO reports can be found in the committee materials beginning on page 243. At the end of March of this year, New York City Transit had a workforce of 51,853 employees. 78% of those employees were men and women of color, of 40,219. 47% were black employees, of 24,176. 22% were Hispanic employees, 8,516. 12% were Asian employees, of 6,141 employees. 2% of the employees identified themselves using 2 or more races for 1,262, and there were 102 Alaskan Native or American Indian employees and 22 Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islanders in our workforce. Women made up 19% of the workforce, 9,633 employees at the end of the first quarter, and there were 643 military veterans, or 1% of our workforce. In terms of new hires, New York City Transit hired 923 employees during the first quarter of this year. 82% of the new hires were men and women of color, or 757 employees. 47% were black, 434, 19% Hispanic, 175, 13% Asian, 120, and 3% were individuals who identified using 2 or more races, or 28. 28% of the new hires were women, 224, and 2% were military veterans, 22. In the first quarter of this year, New York City Transit handled 476 complaints of discrimination and lawsuits. Moving on to Bus Company. At the end of the first quarter, MTA Bus Company had a total workforce of 4,056 employees. 77% of the workforce were men and women of color, or 3,142 employees. 45% were black employees, 1,834. 20% were Hispanic employees, 791. 8% were Asian employees, 329. And 4% were employees who identified using 2 or more races, 165. At Bus Company at the end of first quarter, there were 9 Alaska Native or American Indian employees and 14 Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islanders. 12% of Bus Company's workforce at the end of first quarter were women, 487 employees, and 1% was military veterans, of 43. During the first quarter, a bus hired 74 employees, of which 81% were men and women of color, or 60. 43% of the hires were black, 32, 24% Hispanic, 18, 7% Asian, 5, and 7% identified using 2 or more races, 5. 19% of new bus companies' hires were women, 14, and 1% was one veteran. And during the first quarter of the year, a bus company handled 157 complaints of discrimination and lawsuits. And this concludes my summary report.
Are there any questions or comment on this part of the report? Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. President Byford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as usual, I'll just summarize where we've got to with outstanding actions for which you should hold us accountable. We've already made reference to one, which is the ongoing work to refine the right-of-way delays. As Sally said, the fact that we're now onto the centralized database, which will feature from next month, will aid that immeasurably. Secondly, we know we're still outstanding to provide you with an update on tab violations. We will be providing a memorandum to you to discharge that action. There's a number of questions pending around bringing the subway system to a state of good repair. Specifically, I was asked some time ago, what would we need to do and what would it cost? Well, Wednesday, all will be revealed. That is the essence of the corporate plan. And then, as per the previous meeting, we were asked to provide a subway action plan, and I can confirm progress report will be made ready for this committee in September. Thank you.
On this or the totality of the transit and bus agenda? If there are none, a motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. In a breathtaking 55 minutes.